Okay.
I love.
It's 3 more years.
I love working on.
Partnerships.
Well, not every client.
Jackie's the chair. Jackie had something she was taking her place.
How much pocket of
Years ago.
Well, you know,
the special team over there, but for the support services.
I know.
some of them have been there for a while.
But depends.
It's not like, it's not that, it's not like.
Well, you know. You guys suck at last night around.
That's weird.
All the time.
As soon as that person gets here, we have one more person.
Doing so well.
Oh, wonderful.
So I respect.
For a lead.
Especially.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a great idea.
So she came in.
No, I don't care. It works. It's really great. Oh, you're covered. And I have 3 cords in my truck.
How are you?
Is that gonna be, guys got things going on?
Yes, it's.
It was a last minute thing.
Along with everything.
Somebody, that's how it has been all like last year.
This month, but
I remember when that was so big. Wow.
Kids are excited.
do we think they're coming?
Yeah.
We.
Sorry.
have our garden.
Oh, no, that's, they always.
How did you do it?
Tell us.
And it's probably so.
I
sent my housing
request.
You did. I haven't looked at it yet. Thank you. I think. Yeah.
We need to bring.
Good stuff.
Yeah. That's what I said.
But it's like.
My friend's kid went to one of the classes and she. One of the substance use navigators was at the hospital. And then everything looks good. Yeah, I think she was describing somebody else.
Yeah.
So you gotta have some.
Really rough. It was wild.
Big holder.
Calendar.
Yeah. Very. Over in the Excel, like.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, we had a first time. They were also it's frustrated.
Was it called last time? I never know it.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a step.
Only way we're gonna be able to fix some of this is trying to wait till the nice district's opinion on camping in public.
I think that's gonna be. Overturn, meaning which way? Overturn. I can't remember like. You think the cities are gonna be allowed to do? You know, well, it's because the.
I never seen somebody.
So it's all.
Oh, no. So if I started.
Do you think there'll be a middle ground?
Like.
I don't think, I don't think so.
All of them.
And something.
So if there's staff, I have meetings.
I think there needs to be a middle ground, but not just the like.
Like that's.
If you look at the United States, right?
Okay, because I was so, I was ready. And then I'm like, printing. And then also it's a population.
Pretty.
They might just.
And then that person.
Yeah. Back to the old, like, anti-loitering law.
Say that. Absolutely. So I was thinking about this and I was like.
Partly a judicial problem.
We get-
I-
Oh my God, okay, so then I'm gonna start my breakfast.
Where did it go?
So I would like to start with.
Oh, we have hotline.
Yes,
And that's-
I know all your customers, but I know those higher me.
There's some middle ground there, but I don't think anyone's figured out yet, and it's hard.
Okay. I'm gonna find some.
I think it's a balance between property rights and city rights.
Then once you do one of.
And it's.
Yeah. Make a legitimate and not.
I love it. Oh my God.
In fact, we were talking about maybe.
Between them, but don't-
Same thing, same like books club,
Yes.
same thing. Yes. Oh.
Is that where your?
I don't think it's current.
Yes.
For anybody, but it is.
Not in the full part.
You're also.
You may wanna not have that.
Doesn't matter if they were like high.
There's not a good. but I think it's gonna get. moved.
I think. I think that's why they took us. Yeah, no, we're.
They gotta put it on.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotta Find something wrong.
We're supposed to do, I am.
So.
But.
Hey, you must have paid people.
You're us.
Yeah, we're gonna get started at 1:42.
Not as high as they.
Yeah, tell them.
You wanna do a roll call?
Please say yes, no, yes, no, slow. Let me know if you're here when I call your name. Aaliyah Armstrong. Faith Day.
Here.
Teresa Di Simone.
Yes,
Here. Drew Giacomini here. Joanna Olson.
here.
Paul Davis.
Here.
Karen Lovato or Naveen Badahari. Karen hopes to join later. Amanda Archer.
Here on Zoom.
Judy Albert. Here. Dan McIntyre.
Here.
Kendra Palma or anyone with Tapestry Family Services. Will Van Zandt or anyone with the VA. Will said he could not make it today. We have a quorum in person.
Okay, thank you. So the following terms, this is the same as last week, right, Veronica?
Last month, but yeah,
Last month, Mendocino Community Health Clinics, Redwood Community Services and Office of Education have expired. Those will be part of the election coming up. So if we're gonna move on to public comment. Is there any public comment that we got, Veronica?
I received no advance written or verbal.
Is there any public comment either on Zoom or in the room? On anything that's not on the agenda? I'm not seeing any public comment. We're gonna move on to the approval of minutes from February 26th, 2024. Any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Have one.
Okay,
City of Fort Bragg. I believe that was not Sarah that gave.
yeah, it was not Sarah.
Was it Jeanette or was it?
The lady from the, Jeanette?
Yeah.
Yeah, from the city police department.
So Jeanette.
Any other additional corrections? If there's no other corrections, any motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Teresa,
February 26th.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, Veronica?
Are you supposed to do discussion? I guess we did it before. We're just kind of, okay, yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Faith,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Drew, abstain. Joanna,
Abstain.
Paul,
Yes.
Amanda,
I must abstain, right, since I'm Zoom?
No, not just
No,
you.
okay.
Vote.
Okay, then yes.
Okay. Okay, Judy,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
motion approved.
thank you. The only one where we don't do discussion after the motion is the minutes, because we have to talk about whether they need to be amended or not amended.
Yeah, I got myself all thrown.
Oh, it's been a really weird week. We're gonna go down to presentations. County of Mendocino, Megan, since Karen is not here, do you have anything?
I don't think there's any significant updates from the County of Mendocino. All is well. Nothing new on the horizon, nothing problematic on the horizon that I know of. Veronica, can you think of anything that would be important or relevant for this group?
We're hoping our social services director will be back around this time of our next meeting, maybe a little after.
Right. So we're currently without a social services director who's on leave and scheduled to return mid to end of April. So that will be helpful.
All right.
Otherwise, the county's carrying on the way the county carries on.
Only question I have is, did we ever get to the end of the FEMA fiasco, or is that still?
The FEMA fiasco related to Project Run Key reimbursements, it's still going on. I did notice in the national news that a large delegation of California representatives are requesting that FEMA holds with their original commitment to reimburse these for these services that happened during the pandemic. So jury's still out. I suspect that whole process will take a long time to resolve. And so the County of Mendocino was able to recover some of that loss. So the County of Mendocino's financial obligation to that has been unreimbursed so far was $1.5 million. Able to recover $870,000 through some ESGCV funds that were unspent. So there's still roughly $870,000 outstanding. No, that's that.
Okay. Any other questions for the county report?
Okay. Oh, Shannon's there.
Okay, Shannon? Hi, Shannon.
Hi, everybody. It's been a minute. Sorry, I've missed some meetings. City of Ukiah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm trying to think what updates might be relevant for this group. We do have an affordable housing project that's under construction off of East Gobi Street at Village Circle. My recollection is that it's about 72 units, plus some commercial units. So they're coming along well, and I think they'll be ready to accept reservations for leases in the next coming months. So it'll be exciting to have some new housing stock. There's also a proposed 35 unit development that will be off of Cleveland Lane, which is where the Grace Hudson Museum and the senior apartments are. And that one is being done by the Pinoleville tribe. And that one's still a little farther behind. And I think those are all the updates I have.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there any questions for Shannon?
I did want to. Well, go ahead. Somebody else might want to ask.
Oh, sorry. It's Blythe. I'm just wondering what the population of families or individuals that housing option will serve over there on Gobi.
Thank you. I meant to say that. It's affordable housing, but it's a mix. They have everything from studios to 3 bedrooms, and it's a mix of everything from extremely low to moderate. So I don't know how many units in each category, but it is a complete range. But it is just affordable housing, no special needs or anything like that.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to piggyback on that a little bit. This is something I should have asked this group. I have reached out to, so the manager, the builder, really, the developer of that housing development is Danco Properties, who also worked on the plateau. The person responsible for managing the lease up process is named Alex, who also is the person who worked at the plateau. I reached out to Alex and asked if she would be willing to meet with people who would be wanting to send her high quality referrals. I know the VA was interested in that. So I did want to maybe find out if there's other people who would like to join that meeting if it's going to get scheduled. So Sarah, Joanne, Judy.
I would also,
And Blythe,
like-
okay.
thanks, Megan.
I haven't scheduled it yet, and because I need to work around her schedule. Wait, I just did it. Teresa, Joanne, Judy.
Blythe.
Blythe. My goal was to just work with her on finding out what would be the process to help give high quality applicants, high quality meaning like eligible. I don't judging them, but eligible applicants so that process can happen really smoothly. I know that some of the lease up processes with some of our, like the Millview one was a little bit crazy. So there's been some haphazard lease up processes for new developments. And I was trying to get ahead of this one by making sure you were all connected to her. Great. So.
Any other questions for Shannon?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there anybody here from the city of Fort Bragg? I don't see anybody from the city of Fort Bragg or Point Arena. Are there any other jurisdictions that want to give an update that I have not covered? All right, we're gonna move on to standing committee reports. Strategic planning, I don't have a specific report for the committee because we have not met, but we will be given a report on the modifications to the membership charter later in this meeting, so. Shelters and Solutions, Veronica?
The committee met last week, reviewed the top 5 application in pretty thorough detail, had a lot of constructive feedback on that. Has materials to, so I found some materials from HCD on how to prioritize non-congregate shelter. And so I provided those materials to the committee. They didn't have time to really look at it because of the HAP 5 application, but it's that we're elevating that conversation to move forward as soon as the committee has the bandwidth.
Right. Any questions for Veronica?
Anything to add next as the chair?
No. Well, you should change Nick's name on here.
I should, but he's not a board member and I'm the recorder. It's my job. I don't like to put him on the spot.
I will move on to court entry discharge, Veronica.
That committee's work is going well. At our last board meeting, we approved the revisions to the policies and procedures. We have that revised document and asked Amy to post it. I don't know if that's happened quite yet, but we'll have it posted before the end of this week, probably before the end of tomorrow. Would anyone like me to distribute that? I'm going to distribute it to the committee, but is there anyone else not on the committee that wants that document? It'll be on our website, so you can always go and access it on our coordinated entry page.
I'll go grab it off the website.
Okay. Prioritization is going good. I know that CDC used the by name list to start their polls for opening a few at the plateau as well as their PSH program. And we're using that time and space to develop, to make sure that the review meetings are meeting the needs of those housing projects. As well as our, service providers engaging with people experiencing homelessness. Anything to add, anybody? It's a big topic.
Any questions for Veronica on shelter recording entry, discharge planning?
I just have a quick question. When you say review meetings, what is it?
There's, so the first and second Thursdays of every month. On the first, there is a by name list review meeting. Where we go through, any issues that our case managers are identifying with the by name list. Any problems with referral process, anything that's kind of on the the making sure our system and our coordinated entry is going, like actually working. And then on the second Thursday, there's the Housing Mendo meeting, which is kind of like a client case conference where specific clients that people need to brainstorm with or who've been selected by a housing project and maybe they're having trouble finding the person or, you know, whatever it happens to be that need is. That's kind of a brainstorming session. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Veronica. Running down to the membership committee.
Haven't met, haven't had time. If anyone wants to take over chair of that, let me know.
HMIS, Aya.
Let's see, we met, I think, last week. We talked primarily about, we always cover the data completeness report, which starts on page 26. It's very similar to previous ones we've sent out in terms of the percentages, nothing specific to report about that. And then also we submitted our system performance measure, which is the third of the three big HUD reports that we do in a year. They're starting on, it looks like, page 7 is the numbers that we ran for various measures. There's 7 different measures that are covered by this particular report. A lot of our numbers are very in line with where they've been in the last couple of years. Probably the most interesting thing that I've noticed straight off the top was they look at people returning to homelessness within 6 months and then up to 12 months. And our percentages are lower than they have been in the last couple of years for most categories.
Cool, that is a good trend.
I did want to comment on just encourage all of us who use HMIS, and I'm talking to myself as well, because we have more programs in HMIS than we used to have. I think that it's easy to forget to update people who have been housed, and it's probably the most important measure that we have. And like, I know on my team, I'm like, oh my God, we forgot to like say this person was housed, and we're really, really missing an opportunity to show our work if we, because we do a lot of pressure with you all. Make sure you get them in HMIS, and we forget to really drill that when you've housed somebody and you've done all that work, if you don't show them as housed with a move-in date in there, we're not showing, you know, we're showing, we look like we're underperforming. We're not capturing that data. So that I just want to reminding everybody that suddenly became on my radar, and I'm like, oh my God, we have all these people that we're listing as serving, and we forgot to indicate that they've been housed. So super critical.
Any other questions for Aya or on either one of the reports?
Does anyone on Zoom want me to keep going through this, or are you good? No? Okay. Watch your eyes.
All right, we'll move on to the ad hoc committee report. Veronica, do you want to go over the hit count and the 2024 point in time count?
Our vendor's been looking at, our contractor, Applied Survey Research has been looking at the data in our system and duplicating it. And scheduling a meeting with them soon to review all of that. The HUD system isn't quite open yet, but it will be soon for us to start inputting data. Those of you who operated a housing project on the night that the count was conducted will be reaching out to you to verify your housing inventory count on that night. If you have like permanent housing and your rooms and your beds don't change, we're going to verify it. But if the configuration of your units or beds changes depending on the needs of your program, you'll need to report what it was on the night of the count, and that'll be your inventory for that year. So we'll be in touch with that soon.
Any questions for Veronica on the HIC? Okay, now we're gonna move on to one of the two larger topics that are on the board meeting now, so just bear with us. So we just need to approve today the proposed changes to the governance charter?
Nope,
No, not approval?
recommended discussion. It is not an approval. The board cannot approve the document.
That's right, we gotta approve it next meeting.
Sits up the board.
We gotta approve it next meeting, right?
Right.
Membership will be
Membership
approved.
meeting, yeah. Okay. So we're gonna discuss this one last time before it goes to the general membership meeting. So, Megan, do you want to go through the changes one by one?
I can, so.
Or do you want to just start with questions?
Well, there's two, let me frame it a little bit and then we can have some questions. So there's two areas that need more input from the board on, so I'm gonna go to those first. I'm gonna point something out and then I'm gonna go to a place that needs the board's input. So if you go to page 3 of the draft governance charter, which I don't know what page it is in the packet.
34, 30, page 3 of the, it is page. Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. Okay, so if we're in section 4 of the governance charter, the section 4 that starts with membership. There appears to be a rule that we haven't really drilled down exactly what that language is, that states that that all ESG providers, so ESG fund providers, need to be offered a seat on the board. That adds a little bit of a twist to the way we have reconfigured the board. So if the two ESG providers in our community are not represented on the board, we've got to figure out what to do. So I just wanted to say that language is still here in the governance charter, and the language says, when a service provider in Mendocino receives ESG funds and that provider is not already represented on the governing board, a new seat will be created for and offered to them. We need to do a little bit of research and find out exactly what that rule is, because we didn't have time to do that before that. So I'm just pointing out to you that is.
It was part of the regulation. I don't know.
You're not sure if it still is. We didn't have enough time to go back and find exactly what that language was, but we're leaving it in here. That's what it is right now. And we don't need to just let it be for now. And we will figure it out by the time we actually appoint all the seats. Did you have a thought on that, Sage?
I vaguely remember that there was a regulation that said something about, but I also don't know if it's governing board or general membership. It could be that there's a little bit more flexibility around it.
I briefly looked, yeah. I briefly looked at the regulations and I couldn't see that specific thing. Veronica remembers it being in a specific notice, so we haven't uncovered all of that. But it is a thing.
I mean,
Oh, if you wait, I totally appreciate that. What page is it on? It's on page 3 of the
And I accidentally messed it up because my page numbers weren't working and they all say 25. So
Yeah.
Page 30.
yeah,
Sorry,
I tried to say that. I got so
Okay.
confused.
I messed it up, sorry, guys.
Page 38 of the packet.
It'll be better when it's published.
In here.
I'll have it better when the full draft is presented for approval.
Right. So it's section 4 and then it's number 3 within 4. Right there it is. Yes, yeah, sorry, and then it's right there. So okay, I didn't mean to do a big digression on that because I'm just letting you know that it's still in here and we will have it clarified by the time we need to have it clarified. Before we get to the reviewing the membership part, which we've talked about in this group several times. I did want to then draw your attention to the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee. That is on page, I don't know.
I'm getting it.
Okay,
50.
page 50 of your packet.
And there are more packets over here now if anybody would like one.
Okay. So we have this as placeholder language right now, and we do need direction from this board on what to do about this. So the board made an action, I don't remember when, to develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, but we didn't really flush out what that would look like, what their specific tasks were, what that really meant. So Veronica and I didn't feel comfortable just making that up without the board's input. So right now there's like placeholder language there. And we needed some direction from the board on how you would like to handle that. Thoughts there? There's, as you can see, there's very little information here.
I volunteered to be on that committee. Who else had volunteered to be on that committee?
And instead of creating a special group, I'd like to assign it to an existing committee, so I don't have to organize more people and another doodle and all of that.
Oh, the only reason I'm asking that is for input on this question.
And anyone is welcome to attend. I
There was
just.
somebody else that was really enthusiastic about it.
Who is here.
They're on Zoom, so I'm just trying to see in full information from them on this specific. Like, does this committee need to come up, like, do we need to form a committee to answer these things? Or do we need to?
I mean, it seems like the kind of an appropriate, to form a work group that then becomes the committee.
Yeah, and I can help
After
with that.
it's solidified its proposed responsibilities.
I love that.
So you're suggesting form an ad hoc work group to develop what the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee would look like and what the, okay.
And looking at, because the person who was on Zoom, who I feel terrible, I don't remember who it was.
Camille.
Camille, are you here?
Here.
So
Well, you're welcome to chime in or speak up. You know.
Camille had mentioned that other COCs have these.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, Camille, do you mind? I want to welcome, yes. Hi, we're so excited that you're here.
Everyone.
Camille, what are your thoughts on this? Because I want to make sure that we're following this in a model that's already been, we're not recreating the wheel here.
Yes, hi. So are you discussing in regards to the diversity, equity, and inclusion that I proposed?
Correct.
Committee? Yes, so there are several. I can reach out to one of my friends that I know who's possibly still residing on the board. I don't know, he's been having a finickiness to leave, but everyone wants him to stay because he's got his hands in 12 different pots like we always do. And I can see what they are doing as far as how they structured their committee, what were the standards for the committee, and what were the essentially the possible additional information that we can include by the bylaws for the committee and the structure and all of that. So I can reach out to him for more information about that. And I do apologize, you guys, I'm operating on a sick brain. I went to a Las Vegas Res 2024 work event and I didn't have fun, you guys. I was sick halfway into the meeting. So I was going into those sessions very tired and sick, but I'm still operating and my brain is still functioning. So I'm here, you guys. I'll definitely reach out and see what we can possibly do to not reinvent a wheel, but to use that as kind of like, I guess, a template.
That would be awesome.
That's amazing. And you turned your camera on, even though you're sick. That's awesome. Thank you, Camille. That's fantastic.
So it sounds like a work group would at least have Faith and Camille on it.
Whoa, no, just kidding. Absolutely.
Is there anyone else who wants to be part of that work group just to work on what this would look like within the governor's charter?
I actually think I want to.
Yeah.
Because it's so important in terms of all the grant applications and all the requirements of people who get funded now and boards.
Yeah, and I would encourage anyone else that would like to join us to make sure, because we just want to come up with this information.
Right.
This isn't the committee, this is the work group. Thank you, Sage. Yeah.
The work group developing the language that just to clarify what the committee's roles and responsibilities would be.
I think I have one thing I might have to ask. I know he is in Los Angeles County and that county is pretty big. So we might have to scale it down a bit. So I'll send it to you guys and just probably put in some suggestions and then we can go from there.
Perfect. I'm thinking that maybe Veronica, we could, so an ad hoc work group, I don't think it's totally matters. It's not Brown Acts. I don't know if it matters, like anybody can join a work group if I'm right. So what maybe there'll be more opportunities for people to join that work group meeting once it's scheduled.
Is anyone willing to take on the leading, like scheduling it and hosting it?
Yeah. I mean, unless somebody else wants to do it, I just know we're gonna unburden you.
Thank you, Faith. Because that's my biggest worry is clearing my schedule enough to get to it. And I don't want this work to get hindered because of my lack of availability.
No, that's great. Camille, do you want to do that or do you want me to take that? Do you have thoughts on that? I'm indifferent. As long as we're on the list.
Yeah, I'm on the same page, Veronica. I can definitely do that. It's not an issue.
No, Megan, do we want to start this not slow this process up? Because I know that
Yeah,
do we want to start this committee off as an ad hoc committee and then we can add it into the next revision of the?
I think that's the question, right? So it sounds
Sorry.
like, yeah, we probably would need to take this language out. Because we're not quite ready we don't have final language to put in here.
But we
So,
could
We're
by
in the
next month,
planning
it's
phase.
Presented for approval.
so how about if the work group feels like they have enough by next month to include it in here, we will. If not, we'll leave it out and we'll just have to do we'll do another governance charter update at some point.
Great,
Yeah, I
that sounds
I
good.
can go ahead and send a text out right now. Shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, fabulous.
I'll need it by the 11th of April to meet the round.
Okay.
End of day on the 11th is my deadline.
And I would also encourage you, so what we would need by the 11th is the language we're including in the governance charter.
Okay.
It could refer to another document that's not totally done yet, right? So we could have the language in the governance charter that doesn't go into great detail about the committee, but it could refer to a document that you could continue to work on.
I love that idea.
Could be like develop and maintain such and such procedure that does.
See
this.
appendix X.
Right. And Veronica, I can get that small snippet of that language as well to you. So it shouldn't be an issue.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. And then we can do a work group in like a week or two, right?
We're gonna get stuff done fast because we have a deadline.
Right, Joanne?
So period of time where I'm not gonna be in town, but I'll let you know when that is.
So we'll make sure we know each other's contact information. So Camille, you're taking the lead and then I'll follow up with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'd like to be included as an invitee, and what I can do is send out the email so everybody has it. So I'll start the email and that's all I have to do, and then I
Start an email immediately. That'd be fantastic. That's great, right, Camille? That's what I need.
That's exactly.
Excellent. So Veronica will start the train rolling. And if there can be, again, it doesn't have to be greatly detailed, not super detailed, but language that can be included in the governance charter by April 11th. We'll be able to get it into the governance charter, the membership meeting, whenever that is, the following Monday, I guess.
And I'll attach the governance charter draft in
Great.
Word.
Great.
You guys can play with it, see it. all that.
Awesome. Okay, so that was great. Good work, you guys. And then the major part of the governance charter that's changing related to our changes around membership is on page. But you don't even have to find that page because Veronica has pretty much reiterated it here on your agenda, but it is on page
57 to 58 of your agenda.
57 to 58. And this is the part of the membership board makeup that we've been talking about for over a year. So I guess we'd open up for questions at this time. So the way we had it again was there was 4 standing seats. Individual lived experience, tribal government entity, housing authority, and a housing developer, and then the remaining 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 seats would be within about 15 different subcategories.
Plus another,
Plus another?
plus the other. I mean, we're listing categories as suggestions.
Oh, right, and there's even an other.
Other is
There's
relevant.
an other relevant,
Not like it's an all-inclusive list.
right.
If we did an all-inclusive list, it would go for pages, so.
Right. So this will shrink the total board, not significantly, it shrinks the total board to 12 seats?
From 18 for 17.
From 17 to 12?
So it takes out 5.
Yeah, which our hope is that this will help with a quorum. It'll help with kind of keeping this a little bit more organized and the 12 people that will be here will have really wanted to be here. Not that I'm saying that other people don't, but it'll just be more critical that if you're up for a board membership seat, that you're able to commit the time to it. So.
And I recommend that we continue having meetings the way we are right now with, it's not just board members at the table tracking.
Yeah.
We all as a group, as members, we talk, we discuss, we get that going. But when it's time to vote, it's the 12 people that do, 11, unless there's a tie, and then the chair votes. So the chair doesn't even vote unless there's a tie.
I think that's a really important point. So again, when you're a member and not a board member, you're still equally welcomed and your participation is really valued. Yeah. So I hope, for example, my sense from Will Van Sant is that the VA was not necessarily going to be putting themselves forward to be in a board seat, but I would hope that Will Van Sant would show up at some of these meetings as well. And I will encourage Mr. Van Sant. So we'll see how this goes. Any
additional thoughts other than the additional thoughts we've had for the last year? I just say it because
But you know what came out of that is this new diversity committee. So thank you, Camille.
I think the honest work works in committees. I mean, and like I said, when I went down the rabbit hole of boards, there was
That's really
from
interesting. Yeah.
7 in Orange County to like 30 in another county that I would have thought had 7, and Orange County would have had 20 or so, but every county looks at, every jurisdiction that has a COC is different. Like there's not a magic number.
I've learned in Orange County, they have other larger groups that they delegate things to, and then they go back up.
Mhm.
So their committees are larger and more formal than ours are.
Yeah. They basically, in Orange County, they have 1 per supervisor district.
Yeah.
So this language will be coming back next month to be voted on by the members. So those of you that are here that are not voting, you're still members. We're really hoping you're gonna show up in April, so we have enough people to vote for this governance change. And then we will also be opening up for nominations, am I right? Next,
Yes.
So here's my concern. We don't have these representative group seats in place yet. They'll be in place at the meeting next month. That will only give a small window for people to make nominations. So if you're not at the meeting or you don't come to the meeting, unless you talk to somebody in advance, you won't be nominated.
But at some point, we have to compress this because we are gonna run past terms of existing boards.
I know, and that's why I recommend, I don't know, we could do the approvals in May as a full membership meeting again. Or we could call a special one. But I'm nervous about approving seats and then putting people in those seats at the same meeting.
opening and closing the nominations in the same 15 minutes for the people that are.
Well, they would open starting at that.
It would open.
They don't have to close until the following meeting.
Okay, so that is what you're thinking.
That is what yeah.
That's fine.
We weren't sure if you were all on the same page.
Nominations and
We
then,
can't push it past May because we're gonna
No,
run past.
I was saying vote in May.
Yeah, vote
Approve
in
in
May.
Okay, so we're on the
Approve
same
this-
page. So
Approve this in April, vote in May.
Okay.
So we're approving April. As soon as it's approved, we can open nominations
Yes.
that would remain open until
May,
probably the day before the meeting.
yes.
But Friday before. Right?
Yeah, the Friday before, because we have to be able to do
That's right.
the ballots.
And then we would vote on,
I would say May 15th, and that gives me a couple days to get all the paperwork and the ballot and
It's fine,
everything.
because the meeting's on the 20th, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, gosh, you're forgetting. We were on the same page. I just did.
We just can't go past the May meeting or we're gonna run into term issues.
and to be really like transparent and fair, we need to do some advertisement that our board is changing. We welcome nominations from all of these groups. So we'll do that in a kind of more public way. And maybe we'll get some really interesting, engaged, you're all interesting and engaged, but we could bring in some new people to the board and to the membership, which would be great.
Tired of us.
No, no, I just, when we get to
I think
it,
it was clear that there's a lot of
there's like a lot
very
of positive
hardy,
people. Yes.
very hardy opinions about homelessness and what needs to be done, what's not done. And I think also there's a disconnect between those ideas and the reality that we all face on the ground. That's greater than most would appear to understand. So I think I'll have some interesting conversations over the next couple months for those that, have a different interpretation of, what shelter should be like and or housing for those that are homeless, or how we deal with the on-street issues, because I think from listening to that meeting last week, it was cringeworthy, and I will commend Veronica and Megan for dealing with it. You guys did a good job, but I think there is some more call for some communication with some of
Absolutely.
those individuals. So they understand that it's not as we have to do more than we're already doing type scenario, because that's kind of the same mentality we see from the government. They just throw more money and they expect you to do more with less. And that's not the reality we see on the ground, right? We see a lot of passionate people trying to help with very limited time and resources, so.
So I was just gonna ask, you know, since you brought that, the stakeholders meeting up, which was, you know, really, I think, valuable for all of us to kind of observe, even though it was also very difficult to listen to people. Is there any way to, I mean, in terms of how does that information that got represented there by, you know, people who are actually living the experience of being homeless in this community, how do we, as a continuum of care, are working to help that group of people? How do we actually respond? Because it seems like, okay, end of meeting, they left probably with their own very strong feelings of whatever, but probably incredible disappointment with what services they were receiving. But how do we, who observed that and heard that, come to any kind of a consensus or respond back rather than just leave it as another empty space?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think the commitment from that meeting was that we would have follow-up meetings with the different groups of stakeholders, right, in an environment that was more comfortable for them.
Well, I think we should put an important pin in this and come right back, but I just, maybe we should talk about that in the context.
Yeah, we will. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that in context of that, these changes are gonna.
Right.
Right. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit more in HAP because we do need to close that loop. But I think we need to do it in a more segmented type format, so everybody's comfortable with that conversation.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go back for a second to these membership changes. So I'm remembering that if you want to be a board member, you need to be a member first. And membership is approved, how, remind me?
A person submits an application, and as long as if they're an individual, they have to live or work in Mendocino County. Actually, it doesn't even say like restricted to that. So there's individual members. So that's not organization affiliated people. And then there's the organization membership, which they have to have operations in Mendocino County. I think that's the only requirement.
And did the board approve those or not? I can't remember how that happened.
It's always, that's the way it's always been. It's in the governance charter.
Okay, so then I guess what I want to make sure is we're making clear to people, if we have a brand new person who's not a membership, let's say it's a business owner. I don't want to make it seem like there's a block to them putting themselves forward as a nominee, but they would have to be approved as a member at the April meeting before they could be.
We don't approve members.
We don't?
We would only
Only time an application isn't approved is whenever there's something questionable and it's brought to the board or the membership. So if there were any applications received between now and the April meeting that are questionable, we would bring them to the April meeting and make a determination that's approved.
Okay, so then the communication we would make out to the world though is if you're interested in serving on the COC board, these are the steps you need to go through. If you're not already a member, submit your membership application first, and then you can be nominated. I just want to make it really clear that we don't have like a business owner or somebody who really has been engaged and it looks like we're making it more complicated for them. Because that's correct, right? If you're not already, so I'm going to call Nick out for a second. Nick is a member, right, Nick?
Yeah.
So he could be nominated in April without any other action.
Right.
But
Todd Schotmeyer would have to.
Todd Schotmeyer would have to apply to be a member
Not to
first.
pick on Todd.
No, I was ready to be.
He's the only person I remember from the meeting.
He would have to be a member first and then he could be nominated or nominate himself.
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a question, I'm sorry.
I know it's a
Who
little
approves-
complicated.
Who approves the member applications? Like who determines if there's a red flag? Is it the membership committee?
It is the membership committee if it
Okay.
has time to meet, or it's us.
So
Us meaning
Me,
Dan?
we've
Or the
had one
membership
red
committee.
flag in my whole time.
We've only flagged one application.
And then-
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Because of multiple reasons. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
There are times when an individual member will be an employee of a member organization. And our governance charter calls that out as a conflict of interest.
Mhm.
And so that person can join the COC as an advisory member. But if you work for an organization that is a member of the COC, you don't have a vote.
So like you couldn't like stack it with like 10 Adventist Health employees.
Dang it.
But
We're all sitting.
considering the membership committee meeting exists of me and Veronica right now.
Okay, oh, that makes.
And Aya and.
Thank you. I was understanding the process.
Okay, so we went back and forth, so I got it clear. I think we're good. We'll make sure that we have the opportunity to welcome new members and new board members. They want to.
That's correct.
So I have a question then for me, because I was a board member and I am now one of the seats that is up. Am I still considered a member? Like if I would then be elected potentially for one of those positions, I don't have to reapply?
No.
Correct.
You're still active member.
Sage and Joanne are still members.
Okay.
I know they have, right.
Your board
I
terms
just don't
just
count
expired.
in the vote.
Yeah, your
In a board vote.
Right,
the board terms just expired.
right.
Right.
Oh,
Can you advise us when it's expiring ahead of time? So
Yes.
Yeah, about our expiration.
Yeah.
They tell us very rudely that no one on anything. Expired, we didn't know that months ago, yeah.
This one kind of got messed
A
up.
little bit, yeah.
I'll take responsibility.
But now we've got a nice fresh start. Everything's gonna be great. So, with a lot of clarity.
I think everyone feels very good about it.
But we'll talk about that, 'cause we're gonna talk about the hub. So I don't think we need an action here, right? We were
No.
just discussing.
Just a discussion item.
Is there any more discussion?
Unless there's any public input, questions? So true, I always look over it and I like that.
Okay, how fun this is going to be.
Can I just ask one, absolutely, I know we've gone over this a million times, but the representative for the group seat, of which there's gonna be 8 open. So in other words, that means one representative from any of these, so you wouldn't want to go ahead and get 4 people from businesses that would be,
Correct.
it would have to be different,
Correct.
representing a group.
Correct, but we would recognize, yes, we would not have 4 business seats filled. There are organizations that could conceivably fill more than one category.
But you have to
Businesses
pick
probably
one.
not.
When you accept your nomination, that's whenever you say on this category.
On this category.
Yes.
Pick one that
Who
nobody else.
do you want?
Right?
But also, who do you feel most strongly that you want to represent and that you're able to represent?
And it is up to the members.
It's a little messy.
Yeah, I didn't know about
In terms
this.
of,
Yeah.
I thought that I thought they were examples, not so much as like,
This.
we have to self-identify which thing we're gonna say out of all of the things we do. We have to say we're only representing
Well,
this thing.
I don't know.
It's
Dan, remind me, I don't
It's
remember.
a sample of, okay, here's the deal. It's a sample of the thing, of the categories that could qualify, right? And or organizations and projects that serve homeless subpopulations, right? That deal with homeless subpopulations. It's really up to the membership of how those are elected, right? If the membership decides they want 15 of them to be, 9 of them to be businesses, then that's the membership's really, I mean, like.
Is it?
Okay, yeah, we could, okay.
Because we
Could
didn't
have
get,
9 businesses?
we didn't get into the discussion of like, because then we're right back to the configuration we have
Yep.
right now. Right? It's,
Okay, so then Veronica, that's not correct. So people can just,
I just said you had to pick one.
but maybe you
I
don't.
have to identify, say, but it doesn't matter which category you are.
you can pick one.
I don't think
Couldn't you
we
just
want organizations to like pigeonhole themselves as like, I am representing an organization that serves people with mental illness, and that's the only representation I have, even though my organization serves people experiencing homelessness, LGBTQ.
How about it?
Like, well, a
check
whole
all that
gamut.
apply. Check all
Yeah,
that
it's
apply.
more, I look at the
So
categories more of an informational of the board. These are the services this organization provides.
Okay, so
That
I'm,
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of it. That was all.
Not
That was it.
so when we have the chart of who's serving on the board, are we gonna have Faith Dayton, board member,
Organization.
organization, not category?
No,
No category. I do not want to be categories.
we should.
Faith-based
We
organization.
should. Because otherwise we're right back to the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then on the nomination sheet, you can check all that apply just as an informational
Yes.
Yes.
thing.
For the COC application, I need to be able to demonstrate that we have a board seat, that it's a victim service provider is on our
That's what
board.
I'm.
But wouldn't you be able to pull the nomination sheets that we've completed when we applied and say, we have multiple organizations that serve people?
I think that we do that after they've been elected. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that what we're really doing is voting for a person. And then after,
Person or.
No, we're voting for the organization unless they're an individual member, because if that person leaves, the organization.
okay, so we're voting for an organization,
Mhm.
but then you and I, Veronica, or whoever the membership committee will categorize them after the election, because we do need to
For
show
application.
what categories are represented on our COC board. That is important to
Mhm.
somebody.
So then on the nomination sheet, you could have all of the different items listed. And we are checking off on our application, saying here's the different categories that we would
That we. serve.
represent or serve. And that way you guys have the information when you're doing this, the COC application and all of those other applications to be able to say, we have representation from.
And that means
I
that,
think it adds strength.
Yeah.
and then no one's excluded, so we could theoretically have two organizations that treat HIV, who are checked off as HIV.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. That's what I want. Well, I mean, that's fine. But I mean, that makes sense to me when we're looking at this.
I think it hasn't been typical that we've seen a board makeup that says Sage Wolf representing more than one category. But I think we can. It's just had not been, is there any reason we couldn't, Veronica?
The applications I've seen.
It hasn't been the way we've done it, and it hasn't, but there, you could be a person who serves elderly and
So remember when we were going through the audit
people with disabilities or something?
and they were
Yes.
like, you need to
Yes.
demonstrate, and your documentation that you show to the
Yes.
public needs to demonstrate
Right.
you have all of these categories.
So we do.
That's why I'm doing that,
But we
is for
can-
transparency to the public.
But they did.
They were wrong. They were wrong, but it's still in the legislation that you have to have, at least one person with lived experience and, and something else. But
That was the
you
only
also have
requirement.
recommendations.
You'll
And so-
do that, but you'll have you'll have your 12 board members, but then you'll have
It won't
everything.
be transparent to the public.
No, if we have 12 board members, I think we're just gonna have more than 12 categories. We're gonna have 12 board members and we're gonna have more than 12
And
categories.
likely all those categories, every.
But that needs to be demonstrated to the public that
Yes.
these groups are represented.
Yes.
Underserved underrepresented populations are supposed to be represented on our board.
I think
That's what we need to demonstrate.
Could there be a section on the website that talks about, here are the board members, agencies, and each one has a description of the populations that it's. It could, but
It doesn't
the
say.
way we currently have it, it demonstrates these are the populations that are represented.
is that the way we have to do it?
And I'd hate to lose that.
But it's not meeting the needs that we currently
But
have.
we're not gonna lose it, right? So if Sage is on the board, it's gonna say Sage Wolf, Redwood Community Services, representative groups.
You want
Or
to put it
represent,
on every agenda?
No, you don't.
oh, on the agenda,
What are we gonna put on, that we need to be able to understand, what are we telling the public? What are we gonna put on here?
I think we can make a little chart, it'll just be bigger than that. And so it'll say Sage Wolf, Redwood Community Services, representing a rapid rehousing provider, person serving homeless, person serving, I don't know.
Can we, I think it would be interesting to look at other COC agendas
Do that.
and what they publicize. To see that are we doing too much? Cause it kind of feels a little bit like we're doing too much.
It's a really good idea.
Some just have like the name, the organization,
Yeah.
that's it.
Right.
I
And not that we should.
this is for like we have to have
Practice.
in our governance charter. It
And
does
then-
list.
and
these
then
things.
maybe a bullet point of see the website if
Yeah.
they're further interested in what,
Mhm.
what people represent.
Yeah.
And then
I
it's
think we're
not
thinking
on
about too
paper.
hard.
I think we're thinking,
I think so
I think
too.
what I was trying to, actually, what all I was trying to do was make sure we were prepared to have the nomination forms and the directions to nominees clear. That's where I was actually mostly going. So if we're saying right now, because that's what Veronica and I have to get ready before the next meeting. If you want to be on the board, you would either nominate yourself or someone else would nominate you with your name, your organization, and all the representative groups you could potentially serve.
Correct.
Does that make sense to you, Veronica? And then we'll figure out how to make that transparent to the public once we know who our board is and how we can describe that.
And transparent to the public does not mean on every piece of documentation we ever put out. Transparent to the public means that there's someplace they can go find that transparency with a simple note, that you can find this here. Or you
Right.
can find this here.
But it living on just the nomination sheets in our binder in our hallway.
We wouldn't, we wouldn't put it.
The bio on the
Be able to-
website would be great.
Oh, that would be kind of fun. That would be a good idea.
I mean, I don't,
That's a community accessible resource.
yeah. And easy to put the information on the agenda about like, see the website for
Organizations-
more information on the board.
We can
Tiny,
figure it.
tiny like one sentence blurb on each board member.
Let me go back down the rabbit hole of different achievements. And we'll figure something, we'll figure out how we're gonna do the agendas, but I think we can. deal
We can
with that.
figure it out. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Got a little bit of clarity. Do you feel like we got enough to work with?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's carry on, Joe.
ESG. Veronica?
Let me get to the agenda, hold on.
We are almost done. Veronica did a
Oh.
heroic job of giving back to ESG's CV state people almost every piece of information they needed. There is one missing piece that we will need to submit, and then I think we're done with that.
And this is just for the COVID.
This is for ESG CV.
Formal monitoring.
Yeah.
And is that one,
Very
is that
tedious.
one and done?
We believe so, because we're not gonna get.
Yeah, because she said that once I get, Erin, our grant administrator, said that once I get the final revised manual to them, then she can start going through and addressing and alleviate. I can't remember exactly what she said. There was a term, but it was basically we'll release the finding.
Okay.
Okay. That's all we have on that.
So I have on that. Any
Yeah.
questions on ESG? Public comment?
Has anyone heard the 2023 awards?
No.
No.
Still saying pending or under review.
Okay, sometimes they say
just
it's
looked
still
yesterday.
you and they tell you guys, but they don't tell the public yet.
Still said pending on, I would say.
I can't even remember how long ago we applied. It feels like it was forever ago. Oh, but we usually, it's March.
October.
It's March. We usually learn right now. Right now.
I think it's a
usually.
couple weeks. It still says pending though.
But this is the time where we hear.
Okay,
So we're gonna move on to HOP.
so I'm wondering if maybe, do we want to debrief the stakeholder meeting and then go to the content of this?
Yeah.
Because that seems like where we had started. I'll just talk about the stakeholder meeting and then I'll let Veronica pick up with the plan that we have. We did have a stakeholder meeting last Monday. It was quite intense. Many of you were there, not all of you. And I think Judy, your question was about what is kind of the feedback loop. So the county has a contract with a grant writer. So Sandy O'Farrell was there from LACO, who was charged with taking detailed notes. I haven't seen those yet, Veronica. I don't think she's given them back to us yet, has she? So they were gonna more formally compile the notes from that meeting, and I wanna just bring them, just have them as a agenda item within the COC board meeting, just so you can really see the stakeholder feedback organized in a way that's not as wild as the meeting was. So it was clear to me that there are community members who are really wanting to have a forum to talk about their concerns and thoughts and ideas. That was overwhelmingly obvious to me. And I would say that is something this board has recognized. It's number 3 on our strategic plan. We have not done the community engagement work that we knew we needed to do. Super obvious at this meeting, but we still need to do that. It's not something I can spend my time organizing. Veronica doesn't have time organizing. We do have like system performance funding within HAP that I think could pay for somebody to organize some meetings. I would really love to do that. I think it would be great having a neutral party kind of organize that opportunity for the community to engage. That was my thought as one of the next steps, so that there was, I don't want to facilitate another meeting like that, and it would be great if there was a more structured way to solicit that feedback.
We had on our HAP 3-4 requests for proposals, the activity to develop and organize a lived experience board, but we didn't receive any responses. There was some discussion with RCS about it. But I think it's clear after that experience that I think it would be preferred to be a neutral third party or just a third party. Not a service provider, not a funder.
Certainly not the county.
No, exactly. Or the state, somebody like that. So if anyone knows of any consultants that they've worked with in the past, I did inform Home Base whenever the RFP was out and several other larger organizations, so they didn't respond. But I'm gonna reach out to our HUD TA regional contact, Chris Pitcher, to see if he knows of anyone we could reach out to.
Who's the consultant that worked with us on the map of services?
The what?
The map, remember we sat,
Oh, the strategic planning group, that was tax.
Whoever they were, yeah.
Training and consultant, yeah, TAC Inc.
I wonder if they would be willing to do something similar to that.
What was that?
Joanna was just reminding me at some point, who hired them? It was before my time. Somebody hired Miles. No, Miles Gordon. It was before either your or my time. I think when Maya was still here. You guys hired Miles to do something.
Maya.
Yeah. I mean, it felt to me in some way that the community could benefit, and I know this, just using the example. Somebody like Marbid, but not as polarizing and problematic as Marbid, but an outside party who can come in and gather some of that. I don't mean Marbid at all, but like that's like third party person who could do some convenings, some focus groups specifically with people with lived experience, perhaps focus groups specifically with business owners, like they could do that kind of work would be really helpful. And I don't actually want a bunch of recommendations the way Marbit did. I just want the notes from the meetings, right? Like sort of like, here's what we're hearing in the community in an organized, neutral way. I think could be really beneficial.
So
I have a thought. Sorry. I was wondering how Healthy Mendocino might support with something like this.
Oh.
And because they have a lot of other initiatives here to do that sort of, so Tiffany Gibson would be the contact. And I wonder if they would be interested.
Or know of someone.
Because that's already sort of their goal is to like look at these broader health needs for Mendocino County. And they're somewhat neutral. I actually don't know, as a service provider, I don't think that they would necessarily qualify directly for this population. So that's who I would be very interested.
That's an interesting idea.
Do you have any other, Tiffany?
I know Tiffany, yeah.
Yeah, that's who I read.
Yeah, and NCO is the community action agency for this community, so they do have kind of a responsibility and a role in that.
but they're going to become a service provider.
They are going to become a service provider. There is that little twist there.
And they do service in Lake County, direct services.
So that's a consideration.
It's something to think about. They do have lots of different branches within MCO, so I think it's something that we could explore, but there is that twist there, yeah.
So on this note, on page 73 of your packet, in the HAP 5 application, under land use and development, one of the objectives that the county identified, it's number 2 on page 73, to conduct a needs assessment. Work together, so that's us, the county and the COC, to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment to determine the specific housing and shelter needs of individuals experiencing homelessness in the region. The assessment should consider factors such as population, demographics, housing affordability, and the availability of supportive services. So that's exactly what we're talking about. And this was written by the county executive office.
Right. Not sure they totally knew what they were signing up for there. Before the stakeholder meeting, but.
So they're
Hold them to it.
committed to do that in writing through an MOU that the Board of Supervisors signer will sign, hopefully. So it's there.
There's, yeah.
So it's identified in our plan that we're gonna do it. And not only is it up to us to do these things, it's to hold each other accountable for doing those things.
There is, I mean, I think that stuff that's sort of happening simultaneously is we needed to do this plan, we needed to do a stakeholder meeting. There are a group of business affiliated entities that are wanting to engage in these issues, although their perspective is broader than homelessness. They kind of show up around homelessness, but it's really much broader than that. So there's that group that seems to be forming slowly as well. And wants to be engaged with these.
Do they have a name or is, or sorry, they're like this group, I don't know.
They don't have a name yet. Todd Schottmeyer seems to be spearheading a committee. It doesn't seem to have a name yet. Again, they seem engaged in issues beyond homelessness. They are kind of conflating some crime issues that they're concerned about with homelessness. I don't actually always think they're overlapping of the same thing, but they've got a number of concerns.
Primarily business owners in this community.
Kaya community, Kaya community committee, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, this is all ringing a bell.
Yeah.
Cool, okay, interesting.
Yes. So that was the stakeholder meeting and kind of some of the fallout from that. And I don't mean that in a negative way, that the aftermath.
So I do just want to say, Miss Megan, while I know that it is not the direction you would like to take for hosting any more of those meetings, you did a really good job at kind of maintaining it neutral and trying to bring it back. So I just wanted to give you that feedback, because from the perspective of being on Zoom versus in the room, I think the tension may have felt a lot stronger in the room, but you did a really good job, and I just wanted to applaud you for that.
Thank you, Blythe. Yeah, I expected it to be a rough meeting, but it was a little rougher than I had thought, but I appreciate that. Thanks.
Veronica, was that meeting recorded?
Yes.
Where can I access the recording at?
I have not yet posted it.
Will you advise
me? I wanted to ask somebody, and I didn't know who it would be, if it's appropriate for me to post that publicly, because there were folks who were self-identifying as having experienced homelessness and other kind of connected issues.
Was it a public meeting? It was a public meeting.
Yes, but I also didn't display, well, you could see that it was being recorded.
But
I didn't get.
It was not a Brown Act meeting.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, so, and when the flyer went out or the information went out about the meeting, was it mentioned that it's a public meeting?
A stakeholder meeting. I don't know if it was
a stakeholder. I didn't say public meeting. I said members of the public were welcome to attend.
Public meeting.
So I wasn't sure.
Let me find out. I mean, I'm not trying to keep it from you, Joanna, at all, but it is, I don't want it to become an opportunity for misrepresentation or, I mean, nothing super dramatic happened. So like, just for those of you that were not there, it's not like, wasn't like,
There was just.
it wasn't like, not gonna end up on the news, I don't think.
Opinions of
Yeah,
people, that's all
yeah,
I
no,
wanna
I
hear.
totally understand.
Would it be appropriate to release it to the COC membership?
And rather, I mean, and not to public at large, like, I mean, all of us are involved in this already. So while we were not present or present, it would still give us.
One of the dilemmas around that though becomes how do you share a huge video file
Yeah, no, I
without
agree.
making it accessible to the public? Like YouTube is the one,
Yeah.
otherwise
Just saying.
it's a challenge.
That this is interesting. I'm not sure. I mean, one of the, I guess the pluses of a Brown Act meeting is like, I understand that's a public meeting, that's public. I don't actually know what and I wonder if we'd have to ask county council, honestly. I don't know. So.
Yeah, that's why I haven't
Yeah.
done anything.
I mean, I do think we should definitely bring back the meeting notes and we'll make sure that they're.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So. You're right. I don't know. Let me
Notes are
think about
fine.
it.
I just want to get
A sense of what's going on.
a sense of what people's concerns are and the feedback that was provided.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah. I mean, I
Looking
will.
for drama. I'm looking for the facts.
Right.
Okay.
There were some individuals with lived experience there who were very frustrated about, they were a little bit of a mix, but some of them really wanted immediate emergency response, including housing that moment when they were experiencing a crisis. There was another person with lived experience who had a more nuanced and kind of perspective. He had been in and out of jail multiple times. His perspective was also super valuable, wasn't in an immediate crisis. Northern Circle was there with a group of members of their, I don't know which tribes they're from, but from probably Penaltyville, I think, that were, the individual who was representing them felt like the format was not appropriate, not welcoming to their way that they wanted to contribute to that conversation. They ended up leaving. So, and we didn't get to hear from them in that format. There were some business owners that were pretty frustrated. And then people that were not frustrated, that were just sharing ideas and thoughts. We had a pretty rigid, but too big of an agenda with some guiding questions that we pretty much didn't follow because the conversation took a lot of different turns. Yeah.
And part of it, but I don't know whether it would have helped at all is, like when you go to a city council meeting and there's a discussion or something, people are limited to 5 minutes.
Right. It's true.
And I don't know whether that could have been maintained or not.
Yeah.
In that particular format. I mean, I don't think that would have.
It would not have gone over well.
I don't think that would have been manageable. What really struck me overall in terms of leading it, and because I just think this issue and how the funding comes down and what it takes to get in and how long it takes to build and and how the vouchers are given out is a really complex issue. And a lot of people don't have any understanding or insight of it. So they just somehow think that people are maybe withholding things from them rather than, no, there's a really limited resource here. We're trying to dispense it as
changes
as equally as we can.
in fiscal funding years.
And, I don't know, it was a little bit like a Tom Hines review of.
There was a unhoused person that was out in front of McCavan a few months back and he was lit on fire and I just sat with him and heard him and talked with him and then explained the limited knowledge I had about how things had changed at the federal level, then trickled to the state and then out to the counties of our state and how hands were held and there was nothing people could do. And so, do you vote? So I just had this try to empower him in ways, but then he calmed down.
I think,
and I let him know that in Mendocino County, we have limited resources and we're doing all that we can, all these providers, to write for grants, and we just really have limited resources.
I think that this setting, I mean, I was struck like you, Judy, that it was clear that people wanted to give feedback. I don't think we had the time, or I'm not sure they were interested in that format to hear from us. And then we like, let me tell you all the reasons that's not going to work. Like they didn't want to hear that, and we didn't try. But we obviously need other venues to have that more back and forth kind of conversation.
And some of the stuff that was brought up, I mean, I don't know whether it was true or not, and it's something that it does seem like the COC has tried to address before. like they were talking about, people are still getting ticketed and having big fines and I mean, that shouldn't be happening.
It is.
Oh, and that shouldn't be happening. And if
And
that
being
is happening,
included.
we need to hear that. And the COC once again needs to go back to law enforcement and say, what are you doing? I mean, it's a waste of time on someone.
I think though that Judy, that there's a diversity of opinions on that. I think business owners are frustrated that they feel like
That I
law
can
enforcement is not
yes.
responding. So it's a complicated, it's.
Well, then again, law
And if a
enforcement.
person is trespassing on private property and refusing to move, like
Oh,
what resource
that's-
is law enforcement supposed to use?
Right.
To
Well, maybe that's,
support the property owner and.
maybe that's the piece that they didn't also mention that.
So like
Crashing on somebody.
Wasn't clear.
But I mean, you know, but this county has been known before in the past for really, you know, giving tickets to, you know, fines that they can't pay and waking people up and moving them on and passing things like you can't sleep in a park and, you know, and of course, we don't want our parks filled up with, you know, people camping in our parks either, but there does have to be a dialogue, but if people are being treated unfairly and targeted, then we need to go to the city leaders also.
Well, you know what might be useful, because one of the things that came out of the stakeholders, some people wanted to talk about that part, other people wanted to talk about shelters, some people wanted to complain about certain services, some people are talking about what would happen once somebody's already been housed. I mean, there were so many different issues.
I know.
And they were all
broad.
there,
Too
yeah.
broad.
So I think when we see the notes, we might be able to kind of be like, okay, this is a distinct topic, and have the people relevant to that distinct topic to have that conversation, because there were so many things woven in together. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm only standing because my back hurts, so
I
I'm.
need to get back to this.
Just like lecture over you. Yes, we do. I'm done with the stakeholder meeting kind of debrief, if we wanna.
Yeah, we'll move on to this.
Okay.
Because we gotta have 35 minutes.
All right, let's.
So, before I dive into this application, I wanted to share that the themes that we heard at that meeting, the stakeholders meeting, I did my best to incorporate into here. We heard that we need more outreach. One, to reach the people who are out there, and two, to let the public know, like, these are the services that we have. This is what's available, so that people can actually access what we have. As well as needing an immediate place to go. So an interim shelter. And so the action items that are identified in this plan, I made sure that that was a theme throughout all of it. So starting on page 61 of your agenda is a 4-page, well, 3-page plus a signature page, of an MOU between the COC and the County of Mendocino. It's a requirement for the application that there be an MOU that has the recently coordinated homelessness action plan included in it. And so what my plan is to attach a copy of the electronic application once I have it input into the system, which following the MOU is the template that the state provided to complete the application. So this isn't exactly the way it's going to look when it's inputted in there. It might, you know, the language is going to be the same, but the way it's formatted might look a little different. And so that's what I intend to attach. One thing I want to let you know that there are a few things I added that weren't in the template. I added page 7 of the document, or page 67 of your packet, which is a table of contents so that I could get to things and actually find them. So that's kind of just a little thing that I added. But I also, later on, you'll see in some of the percentages, I added the US Census and then a column called concerns. Those are my notes. That's my addition. It will not be in the final application. There was some discrepancies expressed in different groups that the 4% I have in here as the US Census for Mendocino County for people who identify as American Indian, Native Alaskan, it may actually be 6 to 8%. So it may not be quite as disparaging as it looks here, but it's still, the theme still rings true. And now I want to know, how do you want me to approach this? It will take me hours to go through it in detail. I've learned that in my other meetings. Nick was present in 2 of them. And so I may lean on you a little bit when I'm explaining things. But I completed the pieces under the continuum of care. The executive board completed the sections that are listed under Mendocino County.
Executive office. Or
Executive office. I don't know what I said. Executive office. See. And it's split into 3 sections. Part 1 is who are the applicants, regional identification and contracting information. So in some regions, there's large cities, or a COC, maybe more than 1 county. And so this is identifying all the parties that are part of it, and it's the 2 of us, the 2 entities. The second part is the regionally coordinated homelessness action plan. It goes from pages 71 to 108. And that's the heart of it. But I also would like this group to weigh in on the funding plan. That starts on page 109. And it's primarily how I have identified funding and allocated it, pages 111 through 112. How would you guys like me to address this?
30,000 foot overview.
Okay. The regionally coordinated homelessness action plan. I'm going to pull up my table of contents because it actually lists it all in one place. Okay, there are system performance measures and improvement plan. The system performance measures that are in this application are for calendar year 2022. HUD system performance measures run on a fiscal federal year, which is October 1st to September 30th. So the state is doing something different than what the federal government is doing. So the numbers that you see in here will not match anything that you see from our COC previously. The baseline data that I pulled everything from in the system performance measures and improvement plan came from Cal ICH.
And that's the calendar year 2022.
Yes.
So that's the numbers you see reflected in here as our baseline.
And they derived it from the HMIS data we share with them for the Homeless Data Integration System, or HDIS.
And this is again where I just want to say again that if we're neglecting to say to reflect when people have moved into housing, it's showing up in these system performance measures and will negatively impact us over in the long term. So
I've outlined specific action plans on how to address a lot of this stuff. So what are we going to do and how we're going to do it? I'm all confused. I got all my pages mixed up.
Some of these from, I mean, it relates back to the strategic plan, I would assume.
Yes, so much of it came from the strategic plan. And that which didn't.
I think there was an effort, there's no dramatic departure in this from what we'd already planned on our strategic plan or we already wanted to do. So we were not, this isn't like a wild left or right turn. from our goals.
Is there any questions from the board on this from an overview so far that it hasn't varied greatly from the strategic plan? We all know that HAP has changed, what, 4 times now since we started this process. So who knows what round 6 is gonna be like? It may be completely different.
If there is one.
If there is.
There isn't one written yet.
Yeah,
And their discussion from the beginning was there was only gonna be 5. So if
Yeah.
there is a 6th, I'm not gonna hold my breath on 6.
does the board have any detail concerns from this application that's in the packets? Because I sat in one of those meetings and yes, we went like 3 hours. And we didn't make it through all the questions.
I do want to review the racial equity plan with the group.
That's fine.
So that starts on page 94 of your packet. So this group directed us, staff, to put together an equity ad hoc committee. I sent it out to the full membership, and I had some folks interested. But I only had one other person actually attend, and that was Denise Gorney with the state Developmental Council on Developmental Disabilities. So we did our best. There are 4 topics, and it's key actions the region will take to ensure racial and gender equity in service delivery, in housing placement, in housing retention, and a really long explanation for procurement processes. Under in-service delivery, I described Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority working to become a front door location, as well as a PSH case managing agency. And then to establish collaborations with local community-based organizations such as RCRC and RCS, to identify potential referral avenues to connect people experiencing homelessness to housing projects, and identify ways to collaboratively construct new PSH units for people experiencing homelessness. Denise suggested RCRC because of the experience that she's seen, and she really believes that if they were to be involved in the COC, people with intellectual or developmental disabilities that are experiencing homelessness would have a much better chance of less trauma and better housing. Anything else on that service delivery area before I go on to the next one? Okay, in housing placements, we need to increase our outreach efforts so that we can reach underserved populations and areas. Increase funding to non-traditional community-based organizations in outlying areas to become COC or coordinated entry participating providers. You already have relationships with people experiencing homelessness, so we're not recreating the wheel. So like up in Laytonville, who are the providers, like I know First 5 is up there. Yes, they're First 5, but they see almost everybody through their.
You mean a family resource center?
Family Resource Center,
Yeah.
thank you. So we can build relationships like that, so we don't have to just start cold. And then engage permanent supportive housing providers to join the COC and agree to receive referrals through the coordinated entry. Go on unless there's any more comments.
Sorry, it's the first time that I'm looking at this.
I know.
There's a lot to look at.
I know.
And it's in a kind of cumbersome format because we're following the state's format, so it is.
Key actions. to ensure racial and gender equity in housing retention.
Veronica, is
Yes.
there any mention of maybe the Family Resource Center network across
So-
county?
They are mentioned over and over and over again under our system performance measures. And specifically in how we're gonna address racial inequities in those specific outcomes. And so when I say community-based organizations in this smaller plan, that's what I'm referring to. So family resource centers and federally qualified health clinics and hospitals and food banks and et cetera.
Thank
Does that help? Okay. Housing retention. It shows 0 returns to homelessness for any group except white. And in the plan, I talk about how that's not because they're not returning to homelessness. That's because they don't show up in our system again when they return to homelessness.
So Veronica, you're saying that our data right now shows a certain percentage of people returning to homelessness.
Yeah.
It turns out that all of those individuals are white.
Yep.
But we don't believe that our other racial and ethnic groups are are more stable than white individuals. We think our data is not accurate there in terms of knowing that somebody has returned to homelessness.
Yes. Where is it? Page 89. The percent of people who return to homelessness. So it's actually page 90. It's the second half of that. I take it back. We did have 3% listed under American Indian or Alaskan. The other non-white groups were all 0. And so it probably means that we're doing a little bit better in building, or we have providers who are involved in the system who refer them back into it.
I think it's also interesting that we're talking about a really small number here. So our sample size is super small, and it does seem odd that we keep having to report demographics broken down that specifically when you're only talking about a pool of 15 people or something anyway. So it is.
In one case, it was 6.
Yeah, that's difficult.
But under that, how do we address that racial and equity, in the returns to homelessness? I said all groups are underrepresented or not represented at all. Statistically, it is not possible for 0% of all groups to return to homelessness. Data reports that there is a lack of trust and faith in the service system to assist them again. They do not reappear in HMIS because they do not seek out services after services have failed them.
Can I ask, so I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna preface by saying that data point or that statement could very well be true, right? That's the reason why they're not showing up in the system, but it seems like a more of a one possible reason for this could be.
Yeah, it might not
And
be
so
the only reason. Yeah.
The wording that I would suggest shifting the wording from they do not reappear in HMIS because to one reason one reason for this could possibly be because unless you're going to attach the data that backs it up, it's speculative.
Yes. And to jump on that too, thank you. If we're looking at actions, maybe we need to evaluate that would be our action. Rather than this.
Evaluate returns to homelessness for this.
Yeah. Because, yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking, could the returns to homelessness be so close to 0 or statistically 0 for the other populations because their exits to homelessness are so small?
Their exits out of homelessness.
Our exits out of homelessness to housing are so small, to then track exits returns to homelessness is so small is another reason for this data point. So I would hesitate to say definitively that this is the reason why it's 0.
And have
Because the disparity could have been even in the beginning part.
Yes.
That we were housing proportionally fewer, let's just pick an ethnic, like Latino individuals than maybe we should have been.
Yes.
And so then you already have a small group.
Yes.
And then it's only in that tiny group
that's returns to homelessness.
And that's not really an action just to ensure racial or gender equity anyways. Like we need an action there, don't we?
Well, yeah,
Right?
below, key action, develop
Oh, is that how
partnerships.
this works? Sorry.
Yeah, that's the key action is we need to.
I think the action is great, just that concern section of the thing to just shift the language to be one possible
And honestly,
explanation could be.
The concern isn't part of the application. Anything that's under
Oh.
concern are my notes and my notes only and
Oh.
included.
So-
never mind me nitpicking over language.
Yeah.
But it does sound like maybe one of the action steps, Veronica, could be evaluate.
Add another action step around that?
Evaluate returns to homelessness to better understand.
I have to point to how we will know that. So I have to point to the data we would pull it from and.
We wanna look at exits from homelessness to housing compared to, like, so what's our N? Of the big N is the exits from homelessness to housing, and then the small N is the returns to homelessness. So I'd wanna look at those
Housing.
two.
It's possible we're limiting ourselves from.
Because in a year, if we're looking at, three individuals who are Black exiting to homelessness, and then what is our returns to homelessness? It's entirely possible that those three exits
Are still housed.
Are still housed.
Because there was only 3 to begin with.
Right.
Right. Or 1. I mean, probably not 1, but some of these demographic groups, we just are not highly represented in our community anyway, and there's just not that many Pacific
While
Islanders.
still knowing that they're overrepresented in our unhoused community.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we've learned from our Stella P data is that they're overrepresented, but they're underrepresented in our exits to home housing. So like when you look at the racial breakdown, overrepresented in unhoused, but underrepresented in our exits to housing, which is then going to make them underrepresented in our returns to homelessness, because they're not getting out of homelessness in the first place.
Okay, I can do that. I will use HAP funding for that, and that state and the COC will take the lead. County will collaborate. I'm gonna make it the same date, June 30th, 2027. That's the end of the grant the HAP 5 recording period. And then the data will be demonstrated because of by looking at those two numbers that are mentioned in the.
I have a question. So and I'm sorry if I was just hacking up a lung over here. I'm soldiering on. I just wanted to double check for the data that you guys are gathering and reviewing. Is there not any some sort of data that can correspond with the quality of services? Like normally, I believe usually there's some sort of survey that says, do you believe that, you are happy and satisfied with your service and your, the person that you've been working with, and also, were there different languages and were they accommodable? Did they respond? Did they meet your needs, meet you where you were at? Is there any sort of a survey that does that could kind of put together, I guess, some of the diversity, equity, inclusion question, kind of prompted type of data questions, as well as those who were satisfied with their services? Because I think that would be a truth telling and where you could find out some of those gaps and why they re-enter into homelessness.
So I believe what you're referring to is a client satisfaction survey. I've done them in projects in the past, but I don't know of any that actively use it now. I know the COC does not have that as an item. We would direct providers to do or collect an HMIS. It is something we could explore.
It would be interesting. I'm thinking even in the programs that our team manages, I don't think we've done a good job of seeking out client satisfaction feedback in that way.
We used to do it in At Home, and I bet Finding Home probably does it,
Yeah, I think the reason why I asked that is because when I worked for Home First in the Bay Area, They're a huge homelessness service provider out there doing amazing, impactful work for housing. They did those surveys, and they would do like, I think it's quarterly reviews and annual reviews on him. But again, you know, it's the Bay Area, so they have all the people and all the minds and whatnot to assist with that. But it was quite amazing the type of questions they would ask, and it wasn't really long, it wasn't lengthy, but the type of questions they asked were very significant. And they had like a goal that they measured for scoring for satisfaction with service providers or whatnot, and following up and seeing how they can work together for specific clients who might be difficult if they have severe mental health issues and, you know, might have difficulty responding, or if they have issues reading, they would read it out to them. And so they met them where they were at. And so it was very nice to see that kind of work being done. And I know this is a smaller rural community, but I just figured, you know, starting somewhere to find out where the gaps are and why people are re-entering into homelessness would be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that would be interesting, Veronica. I mean, it's because we do need multiple pathways to get feedback from the people that we serve. And right now, I'm not sure we've done as good a job on that as we could. So there's nowhere to go but up.
I don't know if you find it useful, but especially mental health does those, you know, it's different information you might find there. Cool.
I think it would be interesting to add it as part of like RFP processes, and like we do go out, like we add it as part of a feedback score or something that we can use as data for how well is this service providing or how is this to get the feedback from that entity.
I'd like to add it as all HAP funded contracts are required to do quarterly client satisfaction surveys, maybe with clients at the end. I don't know, we'll have to talk.
I mean, yeah, I mean, some of those contracts are sort of substantially underway already, so
No, I meant going forward.
Yeah.
I think it's conducted moving forward. You know, or HAP 5 funded project.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an interesting thought to do. I think that would be. Yeah. I mean, I can't think it through right this moment, but.
I will add
a topic to
clients, that all HAP funded projects will conduct a client satisfaction survey. And it'll be reviewed quarterly by the Shelter and Solutions Committee.
I don't know if we can be that specific in this HAP plan yet, because.
Are we gonna say review?
Yeah, but there's some.
At COC meeting? Committee, and a COC committee?
I think we need to think this through a little more.
I think that you need to think this through, because it's more than just putting it in a contract. It's also how do we support the organizations with having there is some administrative burden on doing surveys and how often you do them. And then then what do you do? How do you compile the data? Where does it go? Who's looking at it? Who's putting it into any kind of useful format? Is that going to fall on your team, Veronica, like in terms of compiling it and stuff? So there's some who's going to review it and who's going to put it into a format that's reviewable.
Explore this process.
I think we can explore this process. Yeah.
Really good idea.
Well, and the tool itself, I mean, are we gonna tell them what tool to use? People can use different kinds of tools, there's a lot.
Yeah, I think we would for consistency purposes, just so we have the same data.
But I don't think we're gonna figure all that out right now. We're gonna turn this in.
So I said explore having all HAP funded projects conduct the client satisfaction survey.
Yeah, you and I can work on that.
We just did our first annual client satisfaction survey at RCS and in our different departments, and first we haven't done one in a while. And so we want to do it annually, and it is a lot. There's a lot that goes into doing a.
Can I just mention, and not being on the negative side, but we just had two different clients who lost housing and you know, the reason, and if we would have given them a client satisfaction thing,
We're not satisfied.
it's like they brought two big dogs into their living situation that weren't allowed to, you know, it was a violation of the rental agreement. Another one, they just never paid their share of rent. even though it's based on a sliding scale and everything like that. And so at a certain point, it just catches up with them, and it doesn't, much like you're living with them and spending their money for them, you know, and they could have said, I'm dissatisfied with the service because I need a place to live and now I'm home. And yes, you're right, you're homeless, you know?
I think that point is, that's why I think this needs some work, because I think there's a trauma-informed perspective on that. And when you are soliciting feedback from somebody in the middle of a trauma right that moment, it's not necessarily the same perspective you'd get 5 months later from that person when they're not in the middle of that trauma. And by definition, everybody we're serving is experiencing trauma in that moment.
Right.
So it is tricky, I think.
So I think we just do it as a evaluation.
The other thing, like you had suggested around putting it in like our RFPs, that when we're soliciting for proposals, that the agency would be asked to put that information in their proposal and then somehow used. I think being really careful about that, just because of exactly that, is you may either get a ton of an agency might get a bunch of responses from the not happy people, or they may go out of their way, and not to say that like we're not ethical agencies, but it's too easy to skew the data into either a like good direction or bad direction, like. And so I just would be careful in how we use that to make funding decisions, that we're being cognizant of how are the surveys being administered in a way that the agency is not somehow just good feedback. Or
I think what we're conflating here a little bit, and it makes sense that we would be doing this, is soliciting client feedback in order to, as Camille suggests, is there some ethnic disparities, racial disparities that's something to pay attention to. Soliciting client feedback for the organization themselves to kind of like review with. And also, I think we're struggling to, how do we evaluate the projects we are funding from a bigger perspective? And how do we say, as funders, it feels like your organization needs to work in this area based on something objective, not just because somebody was ranting about you who got kicked out of your facility last week. That's not, that shouldn't be the only thing. But we have, those are some tools we need to work on as a COC that we've talked a lot about and haven't really figured out how to crack that nut. So
I have a question. When we have RFPs, do we require anything from those organizations specific to racial and gender equity?
we haven't, I don't think.
Because if we could include that and like in their application, like what is your plan for racial and gender equity? Just even doing that, that's a change.
It requires the organization to think that through a little bit.
Yes, and if we're not requiring that, that's something that seems like less of a commitment, because that can be, you know, that doesn't mean that they were committing them to doing surveys, but like, I think that at the bare minimum already should be something that we're asking.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Like, so that the organization themselves defines how they're addressing potential racial and ethnic.
Yeah, because then our action is requesting the organizations that we're funding to do it.
So the one part in this plan, under the equity plan, that I haven't reviewed yet is the procurement processes. And so I'll add a third one regarding adding racial, like I just said add racial and gender equity processes to RFP. That's what my note is. But I'm going to elaborate that and say that we need to include in all procurement processes that all respondents need to provide a written description on how they're going to address racial and gender inequities in their service provision and outcomes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just my opinion. I don't know. I'm the only one that's like anyone else.
No, I couldn't think of anything.
That feels supportive to me too, rather than kind of potentially punitive, you know.
So what other concerns do you have in here? Because we have to, I assume we need a motion to approve this MOU.
Let's look at the budget. Page 111.
We have 3 minutes. I know, this is a lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say, I'm struggling also with this other paragraph where it says, which I don't know why this changed permanent housing policies to include detailed step, like problematic behavior. Why is that under ensure racial and gender equity and not anywhere else? It seems
What page?
On page 695, it's weird to me that unless we have data that is saying that non-white groups are doing that, why is that an action item here under racial and gender equity? Just because it seems like, are we saying that those groups need that? I don't know. It feels weird to me to say that.
So this was specifically for people like. So how are we gonna help address that in housing retention specifically? And so my thought was, when people are close to blowing out, they don't ask for help. And so that was my thought. My thought was just on how to
Help retain.
That makes sense, but I don't know if we have any reason, do we have some reason why we think this is specific to people that are non-white?
Yes, because of that racial equity, the only, we don't have returns to homelessness information on anyone except.
But that means we think that it's because of lease violations or problematic behavior?
So you think that addressing problematic behavior would be important for all demographic groups, not necessarily.
It just, yeah, because I don't know why we're like, it seems like we've it like pinned this down to being a racial and gender issue. So that's what, I don't know, I'm just.
You're seeing it as a general theme, not necessarily.
Wow.
Unless we have data to say,
I don't think we do.
Yeah, but I
which
don't think that
feels really,
belongs in there.
Profiling?
yeah, that's exactly, yeah, I was just
Okay.
like, why are we
Oh, it
saying
seems
this
to
about?
imply that like Native Americans, for example, are more
Exactly.
likely to have problematic behavior, and we're not.
Yeah, we can't, I
we
don't, that's
think
what my problem is,
I
thank
see what you
you.
mean. I think it's a good goal, but needs to be in a different section.
It's a goal I did suggest.
has to
but
be
not in
inclusive
racial
across the
equity.
Unless you have some data that is specific.
Because otherwise we're implying that certain
Exactly.
demographics groups are more problematic than others, which is not what we're trying.
Thank you for, I was just
Yeah.
trying to be
I see
very
what you mean.
mindful of how I like.
Yeah,
it was just me and Denise trying to come up with language.
But
No, it's good, I know, cause you double booked on another appointment I had, so I apologize.
Yeah, we can move that to a different section, so it's not as
Thank you.
tied to.
I was so
going to
confused about
change
that.
that lease violations or
I think it's,
problematic
that's a,
behavior.
that problem exists
Mhm.
everywhere, because trust me, we call a service housing providers, I call for people, oh, they're not my client. We can't
But-
get paid for them.
But Veronica, you and I
shouldn't be
we
under
can
that.
find a place to put it that would be better.
And I can,
You guys trust us to do that?
Yeah, I actually,
Okay,
there's this whole section on referral to other programs, and that's actually where it would belong.
Okay.
That whole other section.
that's great, that makes
Yeah.
me,
It just needs moved.
yeah,
Mhm.
I can't.
It's an important goal, I think.
It is.
It's really
It's just in the wrong
Yeah.
place.
Yes,
okay, we will move that.
I mean, like
and I'm willing to
this-
help also, I mean, I feel like more annoying than I'm helping, but like, whatever works, I have, yeah, just reach out to me, I would love to help.
When's this due?
The 27th. So whatever we approve today is the final version, because I have to draft
Oh,
it
gotcha.
LOU and submit it online, so I can't make changes after today.
Okay.
But again, this is an application for funding. The state is making us do all this, like, it's, we're not, it can change over
I
time.
have an appointment I have to
Yeah, you
get
gotta,
to,
okay.
to really do.
We should do the, can you just do the funding thing really fast? Usually the way we do these funding proposals is we just do a formula.
We can't vote.
Oh, then go.
It's just both now.
The budget looks good.
I know, do we really know?
I mean,
Yeah,
we could.
I don't know the numbers.
It's just budget categories. We're not.
I trust you guys.
Spread around. Also, I think they've allowed us to make changes when we need to make changes. Proceed.
Proceed. Do the vote. I have to go. Do the vote.
I can't make a motion because I'm not a voting member at this point in my life for RCS. But otherwise I would. I like moving things forward.
To make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, Teresa.
Is there any other public comment?
You really want to ask them.
I have to.
Yeah.
Well, those are arbitrary questions I have to ask whether I want to or not. Not seeing or hearing any, roll call please.
Please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Faith.
Abstain.
Teresa.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Joanna.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Amanda. isn't with us anymore. Judy,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
motion approved.
okay.
Thank you, everybody. I know this is, I feel like a lot of this is having to jump through the hoops the city is requiring us to do.
The next meeting is going to be April 15th. At 1:30. Yeah.
Great work, everyone.
Sorry.
Yes. I got restaurants.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille.
Bye, people. Bye. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, Dan, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
They won't, I didn't use you as a reference for the health board because they already appointed me.
Bye, goodbye. Crazy work. Thanks for running.
You're welcome, Teresa. Thanks for coming.
I think there's like.
Good work, you guys.
I think there's.
Good work.
I think there's.
How does it translate?